Remember when it was bad for local media to convey coordinated messages over the airwaves? You know, like when Sinclair Media asked local anchors at their stations to read the same promo script to describe their newscasts. They were derided by legacy media as Orwellian, Soviet-style propagandists who had created local Stepford wives. Oh, the outrage.
You get the idea there, what's going on. All these anchors and all these markets are required to read this script. It's attacking fake news.
If you are centralizing a political message to however many, more than 200 stations, I think it'll be if they get the FCC approval for this, to 200 stations, you have one of the great political messaging machines in the world.
So it was an abuse of the media for Sinclair to air these homogenized promos in local markets. But when the legacy media coordinate messages across local markets, it's apparently no problem at all. Tomorrow, over 350 papers organized by the Boston Globe will print coordinated editorials to denounce the president for his fake news comments and media trash talk. Sounds like one of the great political messaging machines in the entire world, if you ask me. Marjorie Pritchard of the Boston Globe told CNN, quote, "We have some big newspapers, but the majority are from smaller markets, all enthusiastic about standing up to Trump's assault on journalism." What we are witnessing is the full-on politicization of the media. As Steve Bannon once said, the media have become the opposition party, and that's a pity. I think it's ever since their disastrous misreading of the electorate in 2016, they have obsessively worked to prove themselves right. In other words, on just about every issue, they paint the most insidious portrait possible of the president in order that later on they can say, "See, we told you so, we were right." I think it's also utterly predictable. The better the economy gets, the more confident the American people are about their future, the more frantic the Never Trump press becomes. It's a perverse, inverse relationship. And I've noticed something else. The more popular Trump becomes among African Americans, his numbers are as high as 36%, according to Rasmussen, the more desperate the scribblers are to tar him as racist. And of course, they throw in xenophobic and misogynist for good measure. So rather than cover how American lives are being transformed due to a booming economy and record-breaking employment figures, the media focus on self-created controversies like fabricated dossier claims.
What was in the dossier was a spelled-out, detailed allegation that there was a mutual operation underway here, that there was collaboration and coordination between the Trump campaign and the Russians.
A day that began with clips of James Comey, former FBI director, all over television, telling ABC News that he cannot rule out that the infamous P tape mentioned in the Steele dossier is real.
Tell me the P tape or whatever the heck it is has credibility.
Listen, that is exactly what Mueller is looking at, one of the things, and so we'll find out.
False. And one of my personal faves that the media obsessed on, the breathless Melania is MIA speculation.
One thing that the president and the White House have been quite quiet about is Melania Trump and her status.
Staying behind at the White House, it seems, First Lady Melania Trump. The public hasn't seen her in 23 days, many wondering where she might be.
If the First Lady or the person who's standing in for First Lady disappears, you want to know where she is.
The First Lady was recovering from fairly serious surgery. By the way, a lot of these journalists take off 2 weeks for, a colonoscopy. And now we're caught up in the Omarosa obsession. That's wall-to-wall coverage of a woman lacking credibility, pushing specious claims complete with surreptitiously recorded audio snippets.
Can you stand at the podium and guarantee the American people they'll never hear Donald Trump utter the N-word on a recording in any context?
We already know that this president seems immune from even the broadest standards of decency we've had in common in the past. Another tape wouldn't change anything.
People are at least prepared to believe a lot of the things that she's saying about him, and at least a couple of things have looked like they might be true based on some of these tapes.
A couple of things look like they might be true based on... Omarosa's stream of charges have been refuted by nearly every party she quotes in her book. Frank Luntz, Katrina Pearson, and Lynn Patton, who is her closest confidant at the White House, was on our show last night. They all dispute her claims. And the president says the producer of The Apprentice, Mark Burnett, also denies that there's any tape. But still, the media happily gives Omarosa hours and hours and hours of airtime. I think in their warped thinking, the woman America considers to be the ultimate mean girl helps advance the narrative for the media that Trump's a racist. But once again, I think the media are misreading the American people. Here's the latest data. According to an NPR PBS NewsHour Marist poll, that's a mouthful, 71% of Americans have not very much or no confidence at all in the media, compared to just 25% who have a great deal of confidence, or quite a lot. But the amazing thing is, the media don't seem to care about what the consumers of news are shouting at them. So if the ratings and readership are down, whatever. We have a mission, that's to get Trump. Most have completely abandoned the idea of objectivity and are now essentially operating as full-time members of the resistance. So now that we've established all that, what lessons can the White House take from all of this? I realize it's tempting to swing at every pitch. But let's be real here. As Trump proved in the election, the media just aren't that influential anymore. So the president needn't feel like he has to respond to their every utterance, regardless of how vicious it is. Combine the media's waning irrelevance with the Democrats' invisible agenda, and the president, I think, has a pretty sweet opportunity to actually expand his base before November. Now, I know a lot of people are shaking their head. How can that be? Now, I know he'll be on the stump in critical races before November, but I think he should also take the time to visit places that Republicans have often ignored. Mr. President, your agenda is working, so sell it everywhere. And listen to the people who are being fed a load of malarkey about what's in your heart and mind, and show them what's really in your heart and mind. And yes, that means doing events exclusively for African Americans and Latinos, including in distressed communities, places like Chicago, where Democratic leaders have failed abysmally. Show them a better alternative and celebrate the gains you've already won for them and all Americans. Too many Republicans never understand that you often win respect for just showing up. But of course, don't expect the editorial writers to give you any credit for any outreach like that. But in a way, who cares? No one's reading them anyways. And that's the angle.